Oh, okay.
Hi everyone, welcome all participants. As we are waiting for the participants to flow in, we will start shortly in a minute's time. Thank you. Hi, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Hazel, and I'm from the Business and Industry Engagement Team, Global Division 3, Singapore Business Federation, and I will be your host for today. The festival is part of the program of Global Connect SPF, which is our globalization initiative in partnership with Enterprise Singapore. On this note, I would like to thank our principal partner, Convera, on behalf of SPF for their strong support to the entire festival initiative for the second year. Formerly Western Union Business Solution, Convera is now considered as the largest non-bank B2B cross-border payment company in the world. Just quick housekeeping before we get started. Please take note of the following house rules. Please note that the chat function is disabled. There will be a live Q&A during the webinar. So if you have any question, post your question in the Q&A panel. We will collate and answer them later. This webinar will take you through the challenges of prefabricated, prefinished, volumetric construction, in short, PPVC, and how it can improve productivity as compared to the conventional construction method. Why an integrated digital delivery, in short, IDD, can act as an enabler for the construction process and smoothen the process of design and submission. For the program today, we have Dr. Rafi, an associate in TW Asia Consultants Private Limited, to share the challenges and journeys to achieve productivity from PPVC. Next, we will have Dr. Liu Ziwen, faculty member, Singapore University of Social Science, to share on IDD as an enabler for MEP modular process. After which, we will have Ms. Emily Chin, Chief Commercial Officer, CCRM Manager Private Limited, to share on financing for overseas expansion and project in the construction sector. Before ending the webinar, we will have a live Q&A to answer questions you have for the speakers. Kindly post your question in the Q&A panel at the bottom of the screen, and we will collate and ask during Q&A. Before we start today's session, I would like to walk you through SPF and our Global Connect at SPF initiative. Global Connect at SPF is an initiative formulated to assist Singapore companies that are looking to internationalize for the first time, as well as companies that are intending to expand and deepen their presence in overseas. Global Connect SPF helps Singapore companies to first learn about the country and the business opportunity through sharing of useful resources, advisories on free trade agreement, in short FTA, and structured trainings. We also conduct overseas visits for members to let them experience and understand local business and culture. Second, we help companies to land on business deals through B2B matching, facilitate market and business development through identifying the right market for businesses and assessing the businesses' capabilities. We currently have 3 SPF overseas offices, also known as Singapore Enterprise Center (SEC), set up in Jakarta, Ho Chi Minh City, and Bangkok to provide on-the-ground facilitation and in-market assistance. Lastly, we will assist Singapore companies to localize in those markets for a sustainable business presence to help to grow and integrate with the locals network and strengthen their presence. So let us begin. Let me invite our first speaker for the day, Dr. Rafi. Upon receiving his bachelor degree from a university in Bangladesh, he received his Master Engineering and PhD degrees from Saga University, Japan, and National University of Singapore, respectively. He is a professional engineer in Singapore and a chartered structural engineer. Dr. Rafi, please.
Thank you, Hazel. Let me have a second to share my slides. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am going to do my presentation on prefabricated, prefinished volumetric units, volumetric construction basically, which is commonly known as PPVC, the challenges and journey to achieve productivity target. So this is one of the PPVC, which you may see nowadays in many construction sites. So as a consultant, TW Asia Consultants Private Limited, we are involved with many of the PPVC projects, some of which we can show you here, just photos. So all these are mostly residentials, though there are a few non-residential also. So one of the landmark PPVC project, that is the Clement Canopy, which is a 40-story building project and 2 blocks of 40-story apartment buildings. And this is the first of its kind, meaning RCPPVC of 40-story apartment building. Another landmark project is coming up, that is Avenue South Residence, which will be the tallest once it is opened up. Basically, this is a 56-story 2-block apartment development. Its PPVC actually installation is completed already in January 2022. Maybe the TOP is coming up soon. So in PPVC in Singapore, in line with Singapore's government's initiative to improve productivity in construction industry through PPVC, PPVC development was started as low-rise buildings such as a student hostel, low-rise condominium, then up to the high-rise apartments like 56-story high. So what is PPVC? This means a construction method whereby freestanding volumetric modules completed with finishes of walls, floors, and ceilings are constructed and assembled in an accredited fabrication facility in accordance with any accredited fabrication method and then installed in a building under building works. So it starts with precasting of the module, then in the fit out works, and you are getting the pre-finished unit or a volumetric unit. So this actually requires, we can say, 3C teamwork. That means client, contractor, and consultants collaboration, and upfront design development. As you know, this is pre-finished. We are saying precast. So all the things need to be settled upfront. And it's a factory production line, so that need to be, that means add-ons for factory production, and multi-coordination between the factory and the site. That means fabrication is in one place and the site will be in another place. And the installation is a Lego type basically, Lego type installation. That means putting on top or putting on beside, and clean construction site you are getting. So high quality products and shorter construction period and high productivity. And together with, we need more smart people for this kind of works compared to conventional construction, and also lesser skilled workers requirement. Say, this is one site and factory management issue. The site may be at a far place. For this case, it is in Chennai, Malaysia. And then it comes to the fitting out factory in Tuas, Singapore. And the project itself may be in any place of Singapore, like over here is Clement Canopy for Clement Canopy. Yeah, that's there. Clement Avenue 1. So the challenges are to first, of course, the precasting. Then it is the fabrication yard. You need a large fabrication yard. Then, of course, a fitting out yard, and final installation. So typical convey is something like this, and there is a limitation on the size because on road, you know, there is limitation of lane width, which is 3.4 meters. So the volume, volumetric unit, PPVC unit cannot be more than 3.4 meter wide. Also, there is a height limit, which is 4.5. That is also a limitation that should be taken care of. So special equipment also required because each PPVC module weighs about 26-31 tons. So you need a heavy capacity crane, tower crane, that can handle that kind of PPVC modules. So overview of PPVC, we already mentioned about that it is a prefabricated, prefinished volumetric construction, which are constructed and assembled, or manufactured and assembled. The first one is basically component-wise construction. That means floor, wall separately and then assembled, or you can manufacture it as a whole 3D volume. So in an accredited facility, of course, wherever we are casting this PPVC, that need to be accredited. So for example, this is a unit whereby module 1 is a living room here. Module 2 is a bathroom with, bedroom with inbuilt bathroom and balcony. Module 3 is also a bedroom with inbuilt bathroom and AC-less. And module 4 is a kitchen. So why PPVC? Driven by the need to reduce reliance on labor with shorter construction time, but with no compromise to quality. So productivity-wise, overall construction duration can be reduced for this construction method. And say for each floor cycle, time of installation is shorter. The quality of building works are consistent in a controlled factory environment. Higher quality control and assurance in the fabrication and assembly process, and labor saving, improved worker safety, and also it provides environmental friendly working condition at site and less disturbance to the surrounding. So we talk about concrete PPVC. What are the, basically there can be two types of PPVC, mainly concrete PPVC and steel. Say for concrete PPVC, the advantages are lower cost, material readily available, acoustic, good acoustic condition, durability, and low maintenance. The disadvantages are heavier modules or molecules, you say. Crane consideration, that means to handle those heavier modules, you need heavier cranes. So this is the concrete module. Steel PPVC, advantages are lighter, of course, and better construction tolerances. Disadvantages with high cost, fire rating protection is required, where concrete, you are getting the fire rating automatically, you can say, with the thickness. Steel structure rust protection is an important issue. Acoustic also need to be considered, and long-term maintenance is also an issue because of rusting and other defects. So here is the steel module. Okay, for PPVC, there is requirement from the regulatory authority that we need to complete the finishes at least to certain percent, which is almost 100% for most of the trades. But for floor finishes, 80%, wall finishes 100%, and so on. So here is a 3D module here. All the MEP areas are inside, and it's a 6-sided module. That means the floor, roof, and 4 walls 6-sided. So this module should be able to withstand the loads during transportation and also during installation and in final building structure. So this is the blue color, the blue color one. You can say this is 90 mm thick RC wall, and it comes with, say, bathroom areas will have a ceiling, plasterboard, and so on. Okay, this is complete PPVC module. You can see the aluminum windows are installed, the flooring, and also the wire drops, laminated built-in wire drops, with the bathroom fittings, and all the railings and so on. So here is a section of the unit or module, say, not module, you can say, it's a module, you can say. So over here, you can see the overall height is 3150 for a particular case. And the clear height, you can get 2850. The roof slab is 70 mm RC ceiling, you can say. And there will be a gap between the floor and the below slab of about 70 mm. Once you put in side by side, it will be like this. And we have to do the joints in between all the modules to get the structural integrity. So here is the single module, say, we can, there is some flexibility that needs to accommodate not only rectangular, maybe slightly different shapes of the facade areas. So it's a 6-sided module. So here is the construction process. Say in the casting yard, preparing the reinforcements, then preparing the formworks, and finally you are casting as a 3D module. Okay, then it comes to the fit out factory, wherever you can see a more industrialized like looking, and all the cast 3D modules will be brought here and do the fit out works in a controlled environment. Afterwards, of course, it is the transportation to the construction site, and then finally lifting to the required level with proper safety measures. Regarding the tolerances, of course, the PPVC can provide much better tolerance compared to the cast in situ conventional construction. For example, say verticality, conquest requirement is ±3 mm for 1 meter, whereas PPVC can provide ±1 mm for 1 meter. Similarly, all other cases, the tolerances, allowable tolerances, PPVC can provide with much lesser compared to the allowable ones. Okay, we see a bit more on the Clement canopy. That is the first 40-story concrete PPVC. As we mentioned, it's a 2-tower, 40-story condominium. Okay, we can show you a time-lapse video to see the construction process. So here is the from the beginning. This manifestation completed and then okay, that's the video. And so over here we can see the architectural layout for this Clement canopy. And this is for one tower. And here is the PPVC layout. That means all the modules are arranged as per the architecture layout. Some areas you can see without the modules, means this area doesn't fit with the module requirement. That means the size limitation, or it may be very small areas that can be that in between, say, the core walls and all this need to be on-site casting. So this is the 3D view for the modules. This is another cut view. And here is the 3D bedroom unit, one of these cases. So this is one module, two module, 3, 4, and so. And the structural walls also, this is the cast in situ wall on the external side. Some of the walls can be shortened. That means that is keep it removable if for future removal. So this is the 3D bedroom unit, 3-bedroom unit with the modules. There are 4 modules basically, module 1, 2, 3, and 4. So module size, basically the longest is 8.35 meter, height width is 3.1 meter and height 3.15. As we mentioned, the weight is 29 to 14 ton and so on. So basically casting yard in JB, Malaysia, then fit out yard is near Pioneer Road. Module holding area was also near the project site, and installation at the construction site. So the crane layout plan, there are 2 blocks as we mentioned. So here one crane for this block, another crane for this one. This is the crane capacity within the arm length. So as the maximum module weight was 29 ton, this was able to be erected with 48 ton crane. So here is precast factory over there, and this is some more photographs of the precast yard. This is just for storage and then transported to the fit out yard. So in the fit out yard, all the trades are completed in a factory environment. Then installation of modules on site. It is lifted with a special type of lifting arrangement for uniform distribution of the lifting force with additional safety measures also. and then completed the whole 40-story building. So the benefits are, of course, environmentally friendly. That means less dust, less noise, less vehicle trips, because only few, there's just the number of modules, and most of the fabrication is offsite. So this is the PPVC construction, where you can see very cleaner area, and this is conventional method where quite a lot of works involved. So health and safety also much better for this PPVC. The quality of the final product is also better as it is done in a controlled environment. Then productivity wise, the buildability score is achieved is 95, whereas requirement was 88. So it's quite high buildability. Also, the manpower productivity is 0.613 meters square per man day, whereas for normal construction, it is 0.357 meters square per man day. So improvement from 2D to 3D in the earlier PPVC or earlier construction time, this kind of construction, casting was in 2D, then it was jointed together to form the 3D, like this. That means slab, wall, separately cast. Now we are able to construct the whole unit or whole module as a 3D structure. So the key challenges were heavier modules required heavier cranes, and fabrication and fit out yards, you need large areas for those. And interface connection between the modules is an important design criteria. And pre-mass trial is required before putting it onto the structure, that the modules can be fit perfectly. And robustness of the structure need to be achieved through structural connection. So concluding remarks, so right people, you need right people because the work area has been changed. You know, the evolution of mobile phones, how it has been changed. It was quite rapid, but for construction industry, though it is not so rapid, but it is changing, of course, from conventional to now volumetric construction. So collaboration is very important. Then deliberation of technical skills, evaluation of production proposal, timely decision, as it need to be settled before the precast works starts. So let's collaborate to make it happen. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. That's all from me. Now I pass it to Hazel. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rafi. That was a very good sharing. So now we would like to start our first poll of the webinar. So, first question. So would you like to be interested to explore financial grants we could help to take your business overseas? And second question, which stage would you consider your company to be at in relation to internationalization? Thank you very much for your participation. Next, let us welcome our next speaker, Dr. Liu Ziwen. Dr. Liu has over 10 years of experience in the architecture, engineering, and construction industry. He is a faculty member of Schools of Science and Technology at the Singapore University of Social Science, in short SUSS. He teaches courses related to BIM, Integrated Digital Delivery, and Facility Management. Dr. Liu, please.
Thank you, Hazel. Let me loading my slides. Yeah, is my slides visible? Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me for this SBF sharing. Okay, I would like to share my personal view on this, how actually we can leveraging on digitalization to support the MEP modularization process. It's my pleasure to support SPF event, and I'm Ziwen, faculty member from SUSS, School of Science and Technology. So my topic today would be on transition from building information modeling in short BIM to integrated digital delivery, IDD. So yeah. So I would like to cover a couple of things. Firstly, we'll talk about this construction ITM industry transformation map. Then I will zoom into the two key pillars which I identified under ITM: DFMA, design for manufacturing and assemble, and lastly would be IDD, integrated digital delivery. Then I will spend some time to talk about how actually we can leveraging on IDD, how IDD enables these MEP modularization processes in three different stages: to design, to fabrication, and through construction. Then I further break down construction into two stages: logistics and assemble. Then I will discuss the key takeaway from my presentation. Then finally, I will conclude this presentation. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so some background info about construction ITM. Okay, back into year 2018, Singapore announced this industry transformation map, in short ITM, for construction. And there are three key trends with the aim to transform our built environment sector. These are green building. Okay, Singapore Green Mark perhaps is the most diffused green building rating system for the tropical climate. Then followed by DFMA, which encourage more offset construction and deliver to the construction site, like Lego kind of construction. DFMA actually moves the traditional on-site work offsite into the controlled factory environment. And the designs actually upfront for ease of the manufacturing and the assemble to improve the quality and the productivity. Then lastly, the last key trust actually is on integrated digitally delivery. Okay, the backbone of this IDD actually is building information modeling. Okay, leveraging on BIM, fully integrates the processes and the stakeholders along the construction value chain to advance ICT technologies and smart technologies. Okay, for DFMA, as I mentioned in the previous slides, okay, DFMA is one of the key pillars under ITM. It's defined as a game-changing technology in our AEC industry. DFMA actually combines two methodology. One is a D for M, design for manufacture. Another one is a D for assemble, design for assemble. Okay, for D for M, basically means a design for ease of the manufacture of the parts that will form a product. For D for A, which means the design of the product for ease of the assemble in construction site. DFMA, okay, demonstrates various of benefits actually already mentioned by the previous speaker, Dr. Ismail. Yeah. And for MEP modularization, okay, I think according to the BCA guideline, there are three types. One is the horizontal, which are the ceiling mounted. Another one is a vertical, basically is the shaft, the radar. And the last will be the plant room, is basically a pump site. Yeah. Okay, so well, on another hand, okay, the digitalization journey in Singapore also gained its moment. Okay, digitalization also brings various benefits to the industry, like improve the on-site and off-site construction and coordination. Okay, provide a better view, better visualization. All these are the benefits. But in fact, Singapore digitalization journey has actually been evolved from a BIM to virtual design and construction to IDD. So Singapore actually have been promoting BIM back into year 2010. So first roadmap basically was emphasis on this widespread industry BIM adoption, which more on the mandatory BIM e-submission and BIM single-use purpose, create a BIM model for submission, for quantity takeoff, and so on. Then back into year 2005, okay, there is an initiative called Virtual Design and Construction, VDC. Basically, it's emphasis on the widen the design and the construction collaboration through the VDC methodology. Okay, in year 2017, okay, Singapore BCA rolled out the third BIM roadmap. Basically, it's integrated digital delivery, in short, IDD. So the objective for IDD is, according to BCA, is to widespread of this IDD adoption through all the life cycle in Singapore built environment sector. So I would like to emphasize here, okay, that the backbone of IDD is a BIM. So you can actually observe from this figure here, yeah. And this is the figure is borrowed from BCA. Okay, BCA's invasion of the scope of IDD into 4 phases covers the digital design, digital manufacturing, and fabrication, digital construction, and finally, okay, digital asset delivery and management. However, I would like to stress that these are not 4 separate silos. Actually, they are connected as a whole. Okay, in my personal view, okay, IDD I actually serves as a horizontal enabler, okay, that's supporting other several key pillars defined under Singapore Construction ITM, Green Mark, DFMA, and even Smart FM. So please allow me to have a further elaboration on how IDD supports DFMA, in particular MEP modularization process. Okay, how IDD enable MEP modularization process through design, fabrication, construction, and construction further breakdown into logistics and assemble. So for FM, obvious, okay, there are also have a number of use cases, digital use cases during the FM stage, but some of the examples such as leveraging on a BIM intelligent object for modular MEP maintenance spacing checking. And as BIM actually offers a better visualization, so people are actually creating another of geometry attached to the BIM to perform the maintenance checking. And I will not list all, and due to the lack of time, I will be only emphasis on the design, fabrication, logistics, and assemble today. Yeah. Okay, so now let's talk about how IDD supports MEP modularization in the design phases. Okay, there are a few things. First of all, okay, digital modeling BIM object. Okay, secondly, will be a modular design man site, and computational BIM, and the virtual coordination. These are the 4 of digital use cases actually during the design stages. And first of all, I think it's critical to have a real manufacturer, real BIM object instead of a generic BIM object during the design phases. As the real manufacturer BIM object contains a real manufacturer data, it actually will facilitate and ease the modular MEP downstream. However, okay, also understanding from some of the consultants, okay, like the real manufacturer detail normally would not be specified in the BIM model, and the designer only specifies those of parameters which are relevant to building performance based on the real manufacturer parameter. So actually, there are solutions in the market nowadays provide real manufacturer objects, BIM objects, and to assist the designer to just click a button, okay, then we'll remove all the manufacturer parameters. Then the model will be fit for tendering and handover purpose. Yeah, so I think go back, okay, utilizing a real manufacturer object such as the mechanical equipment, valve parts, and other components at a level of 1-to-1 millimeter real manufacturer product, that the company will slowly and continuously accumulate it and expanding their object library for the MEP modularization. Next, okay, to have MEP modular design in the mine site, okay, based on the BIM characters, BIM actually offers a high precision and a better visualization. The integrated design of a pump, valve, and other components, pipes, air conditioning ducts, supporter, and hangers actually should be ought to form the assemble unit, such as the horizontal ceiling mounted vertical of a shaft, raiser, pump room, and so on. But also there are some of the factors to be considered, such as the layout of the room, transportation, lifting, and the placement of MEP modular units, installation conditions, and other limiting factors. Yeah. So in local industry, okay, there are industry people actually are stakeholders are actually importing an analysis model to BIM modeling software after analysis, as shown in the figure below here. Actually, they are performed an analysis to the software, then they will export the model to one of the authoring software. Is Revit. Yeah. Some of BIM models, they actually create a part by part, then they will form into this integrated MEP modularization with all these chillers. Okay, yeah. Then the third use cases during the design stages will be computational BIM. Okay, leveraging on computational BIM approach, actually we could generate various design options. Yeah. Computational BIM defined by BCA refers to leveraging on problem-solving approach, where we can change certain parameters to have automation design. And below here is an example, okay, from industry. Okay, they actually are creating a BIM model. This is a modular supporting frame. They actually, by changing the parameter in the model, they can actually have a different design options for this supporting frame. Yeah. So by using this, actually, we can actually generate quite a lot of design options within a limited times. Yeah. Okay, next, okay, based on the AR/VR technology to do a BIM coordination. So we actually could leverage on this AR/VR and even MR big room concept to evaluate different type of modular design. The project stakeholders actually could increase their efficiency and the communication of coordination through this VR/AR. The first and the second image, okay, here is about the VR. Okay, you can scan the QR code. Okay, the first one, the below you got QR code. You can scan the QR code. Then you will see the 3D this MEP modular model. Okay, in a virtual environment. So you can put your phone into your glass. Then you can have a feel how this palm room looks like. And the second image here, okay, is also another type of VR. Okay, but most of the time we need to connect into the software. Okay, it's through this variable VR need to connect with the software. This VR technologies actually enables different stakeholder just by wearing the glass with a navigator to virtually walk into the model, then to perform their coordination. Yeah, especially during COVID pandemic, we see actually some of the stakeholders actually they actually brings different stakeholders into the virtual model to perform coordination. Then the third image is about the concept of a big room. Yeah, they'll bring a different stakeholder come to the room to discuss the different design options. Then the video corner here, okay, is one of the BIM solution. Okay, is called a BDIP, which they allow a real-time model sharing and the discussion among different participants. Yeah, that can be through this iPad, iPhone, okay, even your laptop. Yeah. So once we move one, then another, the rest will be moved accordingly. Yeah. Okay, next I zoom into the fabrication part. Okay, under the fabrication part, there are three observations. Okay, first one is the fabrication model. Then second one will be generate bill of material. Then lastly will be a tracking through a QR code and RFID. Okay, so from here, BIM authoring tools allows actually convert the design intent model into fabrication model, and would be able to send to the fabrication machine for fabrication. Then it would cut the icon dark optimally to save the dark metal materials. You may also can leveraging on BIM authoring tools to generate the fabrication details as shown in the figure below here. They also even indicate a different color codes for different components, supply return, you know, yeah. So next, okay, a bill of material, okay, better control of the MEP modular costs. BIM enables QTO, quantity takeoff. it could actually generate a view of a material to a native beam function. Yeah, so beam function actually offers you this QTO function. Yeah. Okay, next, okay, tracking to QR code. Have increasingly seen this tracking status, different components of PPVC, modular components through a QR code and RFID nowadays in the market. Here is just an example, okay. QR code actually enable a bi-directional information management. It's not just a single way on the construction side. You scan, you will see the info. Actually, it's a bi-directional. So on the side, you actually can scan the QR code. You can query the info. Hey, this is a component is delivered by who, built by who. These are kind of info actually can be done through a certain of apps. By using your mobile phone, you to scan, you will know the information. Then another way, the info actually you scan on the construction site can be also recorded the status, like a production, delivery, installation. This kind of info will be also able to sync back to your BIM model. Okay, you can see the below here. Okay, the guy actually scanning the QR code and bringing the info back into the BIM model. Then the BIM model also display a different color codes. A certain component is already delivered, certain component is already maybe after QA, QC. So this kind of thing can be done through QR code tracking. Yeah. Okay. Another cases, okay, people are also using RFID. That would be a same principle as compared with the QR code, but perhaps the QR code slightly cheaper. But we may need to have a QR code printer. We need to print out all these QR code and paste. Yeah, but these are the two images from a BIM Magic. They actually embedded the QR code, the RFID into the precast element. Then they will track the RFID at various stages, such as production, inventory, and this precast element delivered to the construction site. Yeah, and so on. And move into logistics. Okay, nowadays, okay, there are some of CDE, common data environment, and or IDD platform would support the model components and the view to generate the QR code and share the link in batches. The link actually can be sent to the project participant for quick location and sharing, and the QR code also can be printed and pasted into this corresponding location on the site. Yeah. Here's a video actually how they are generating this QR code. It's batch QR code generation. Yeah. And the QR code contains the key information. Yeah. Which then they will print out by this printer, then paste into the construction site. And the next digital use cases, okay, is on transportation planning. Okay, leveraging on BIM technology, we actually can do this transportation simulation to simulate the loading and the transportation of the MEP modular units and place them reasonable to make fully utilize of the space of the transportation vehicles and maximize the transportation efficiency. Yeah. And lastly, okay, move into the assemble. Okay, leveraging on BIM or IDD, we could simulate and planning the assemble sequencing and the assembled master of the MEP modular. And here is use cases about virtual construction to ensure the feasibility of the assemble on the construction site. And they actually do simulate the pump site. They create a model, see how this pump set will be going to this pump room. Yeah. Yeah, this is for the pump room. Another one is for the horizontal tap. Okay, they actually can do the similar thing for the horizontal ceiling taps. Yeah. Yeah, lastly, okay, the 3D laser scanning technology, we actually can scan the construct MEP modularization, then take it back to compare with the BIM model to see the tolerance and perhaps to validate the SBU BIM model. Yeah, these are the use cases that also happen in the construction industry. Yeah. And with that, okay, I would like to conclude my presentation, okay. So over the past few years, okay, BIM, DFMA, and in particular the MEP modularization have attracted interesting in our industry, and we see actually quite a lot of projects actually adopt both. Yeah, and there is a transformation actually from BIM to VDC to IDD from local industry, and across the IDD life cycle, IDD enables MEP modularization through 4 phases: design, fabrication, logistic, and assemble. And there are 10 observations, okay, made through this IDD for this MEP modularization, which are during the design, digital modeling object, AR, VR boosts BIM coordination, then enhance decision making through computational BIM, come into fabrication, okay, then the things like optimize the design model to fabrication model, enable status through QR code or RFID tracking, and auto-generate a BOQ. Assemble, we can do virtual planning, and we also can have a scanning then to compare the S-plan versus the S-build. On the logistic, okay, we can do a tracking the tracking through QR code. We can also do a transportation planning. Yeah, these are the 10 digital use cases. Yeah, across the IDD life cycle. And here is digital use cases in China. Okay, actually, I coincidentally see this WeChat post yesterday. I think it's also fit for today's topic. So this is one of the digital use cases in China. I saw yesterday. This project is done by Chinacom. Actually, it's for refrigerant heat exchange station. Yeah, so they actually adopt a BIM or digital plus fabrication construction mode. Okay, including these 4 phases. One is a BIM in design. Okay, secondly is a BIM with the fabrication. Then on the logistic, they actually using a BIM plus IoT for positioning and the distribution. And lastly is this BIM assemble on the construction. So these are the 4-dimensional integration forms this new construction method for them. Yeah, so if you are keen to know more info, then here is the link below here. Yeah. And I would like to end my presentation with this cartoon picture about the future in mind. What would be the construction of the future in 2050 be like? Yeah, then this is the illustration of what construction site and the future will be like in 2050. It's taken from a building review journal and Autodesk. Yeah, if you observe various description in this figure here, it looks like we are already have a similar element even today. Yeah. Yeah, so I would like to acknowledge these companies and the professionals who contribute to my deck of slides. Yeah. Then lastly, okay, I would like to make a short advice, short promoting for our courses here. I hope the organizer will allow. Okay, in order to supporting government initiatives, our school, Singapore Unit of Social Science, actually working with the BCA, we have rolled out the course entitled Integrated Digital Delivery in Built Environment. Our first one actually attract around 30 participants from the industry. Our course covers a topic like related to IDD, such like interoperability issue, common data environment, and the different of digital use cases across the life cycle. Yeah. The course is also recognized by Building Smart Singapore DDM accreditation. The unique feature of our course is taught by the practitioners, including government officials, academics, and the industry leaders, also the overseas experts. They are both locally overseas. So the participant will not learning only the academic knowledge, they will also keep up with the latest IDD use cases in the both local and overseas industries. If you are interested, and here is the link. Yeah. With that, okay, thanks for your listening. I would like to hand over to the MC today, Miss Miss Hazel, please. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Liu, for the good sharing. So now we will welcome our last speaker, Miss Emily Chin. So Emily has close to 15 years of corporate banking and financial services experience with major international banks. So she joined CCR manager since 2017 and held leadership roles across product sales and solutioning. She is currently the Chief Commercial Officer focusing on delivery corporate finance advisory. Ms. Chin, please.
Thank you, Hazel. Just make sure that I sound okay. Hazel, can you hear me? I believe if you can, then the rest would be able to hear me well.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Can I trouble you for the second slide, please? Thank you, Hazel. So before I start, a big thank you for the organizers and our colleagues at SPF. And also, I think I learned a lot from my esteemed, co-host or co-speakers today, Dr. Rafi and Dr. Liu. Just kind of, recapping what I heard from these two gentlemen, and will also segue quite well into my sharing this afternoon. So I think from Dr. Rafi, I've learned about the various COPS optimization approaches that is in the market today. I think especially helpful for the Alliance Gas Singapore, as well as in terms of the high cost of labor. So what I take away from that, with this modularization technique to building, is that I take up one point that you will need more enablers such as bigger cranes and larger heavy equipment to support some of these techniques. So I think from a financial practitioner, that sounds to me like a thing that probably a lot of the contractors or the value chain actors in the industry, would require some form of funding support to support that direction of growth. So I think thank you, Dr. Rafi, for educating me as well and giving me that early view to how the industry is, moving towards. And thank you, Dr. Liu, for sharing about the whole, IDD approach to things. I really appreciate what you've shared around, the value chain of construction. And again, from a financing practitioner perspective, I also believe that when you have the last slide of the comic, perhaps to also maybe include our perspective from a finance angle, how that would really help to improve the access to financing, should the providers of financing have a greater visibility in terms of the stage of completion, the train or kind of like the chain of custody of the materials as well, especially in the landscape today where we're at, whereby environmental factors come to the forefront, especially in the area of construction. So thank you both for sharing this afternoon. Coming back to my part of the sharing for our audience today, allow me to introduce myself, which I think Dr. Hazel has already done a good job, but let me follow on from there to talk about my firm, CCR Manager. So as a legacy, we are a network of a provider or service provider, which consists of a network of more than 100 financial institutions globally. You will see the map a part of my slide. But in terms of the financial advisory services, I would say that this business unit is slightly younger, about 2.5 years. And for the most part, we are basically, in my view, a baby of COVID. We were born out of the COVID period because as a response to some of our stakeholders in the community, talking to us to support them to raise funding or to find financial solutions, tapping on our wide network of FIs. So that's what we do at CCR Manager. We are a corporate advisory firm, primarily serving the mid-market SME corporates in this region. That's basically what we do. Allow me to talk about the content of this afternoon sharing. Hazel, may I ask you for the next slide, please? Okay, so it is a very busy slide, but if I may kind of talk you through the pillars around it. The focus I'm having for this afternoon sharing is really to get us thinking in the areas of funding planning, especially in relation to projects in construction or something that is related to a more higher capital expenditure typically across a longer period of time, with a payback period as well over a longer period of time. So I think these are, I would say, kind of our bankers' cheat sheet, what are the building blocks, right, into how we evaluate a project, whether or not a banker or a lender will be comfortable in extending the loans in whatever shape and form, right? So I think let's start with the first block. Of course, the most important thing is evaluation of the project, right? Will the project provide the required, rate of return and the value creation, for the business, right? So I think that's the most important, right? So this analysis will include things from, the design stage or the planning stage to construction period, and all the way to post, we call it TOP, very loosely, but post completion. Essentially, will the valuation of the project be much higher or higher enough to make sure that it covers the cost of construction and to give the lender who relies on the completed project as a security be comfortable of that, right? So I think that part of it would form the project in essence. In terms of finding funding, that's where our firm supports our clients to do. There are many ways to structure the different funding sources. As a guiding post, the cheapest funding always typically comes from the banks, right? The bankers who provide debt financing. And very often on the extreme end, equity, which is the developer or the business owner's own money, is the most expensive. And therefore, it is important to see how we can balance the two to ensure that it's project bankability, but at the same time enables the business owner or the developer to maximize their return on investment or on their part. So I've listed out a few components. Some of it may be familiar to some of you, some of you may not be as familiar. So I've also noticed in the market today, there are quite a few construction firms, that also offer some form of financial support, right, to basically add as a value add to their customer to enable that project to happen. So therefore, in effect, actually, there are more than one sources of funding that comes from different providers. The other consideration in terms of sourcing is not just the party that's providing the money, but also influenced by the location of the project. And very often, the project location also impacts or informs how the funding should be raised, given that a party that is more familiar with the market, more comfortable with the local context or local environment, will definitely be more receptive to the risk that they have to assume when they provide the funding. Those are things that I think is just to get us thinking about the various funding sources across the debt to equity spectrum, as well as even the debt spectrum. There are many parties to it, from banks to finance companies, credit funds, your suppliers, the contractors, and so on and so forth. So I think that is the different ways that we can combine it. But in terms of the key essence of it, everybody wants to make sure that they get paid back, right? If they are a lender, how do you pay them back after the project is completed or during the process? And if they are an equity investor of some sort, how do they make the financial returns for the risk that they take? So all these elements would go into the essence of, as a project owner or developer, your own cash flow planning. How much of it will have to be, allocated for the repayment, as well as is the project able to withstand certain stresses, right? If there's a delay, if there is a rising material cost, like what we see in the most recent, 18 months or for the big part of COVID, and even right now, the rising interest cost as well. So all these things are things that, typically in the planning stage will have to be prepared so that, regardless of certain stresses, the project can still be a viable one. So that is something that I think is critical. And I think, very often, some of my clients think that the banks are being difficult in providing the funding that they require. In fact, I would urge, my clients as well, together with us, to very often use it as an enabler, to really be a worst critic, right? What if the worst of the matters happen? What if a second COVID happens? How is this project going to withstand on itself? And beyond that, will this project actually affect other parts of the business? All these things comes into consideration. And I think hopefully having this view would allow us to also sense check, the project viability from a different perspective. And of course, in any funding planning, very often any lender or any financier would ask for certain assurances. How do I get paid if things doesn't go well, right? Things like, what is the collateral I can get? So a lot of these things are just examples. There's more to it than that that I've listed here. It could be even things like assignment of future revenue, or assignment of certain insurances, for example. So all this will come under the collateral package, and this is part of the negotiation elements that will go into your funding planning with the respective financing provider. That's on the financing side, but of course there are other things as well to be considered. In terms of your existing business, debt that you assumed, all the commitments that you have to do, and how does this new project impact that should things doesn't work out smoothly. So very often, lenders, as you can imagine, are the glass half, empty kind of mentality. Whereas for most business owner who is, wanting to grow, you're typically looking at a glass half full mentality. So these two are the same facts. It's just a matter of perspective. But in terms of making sure that your project is something that is bankable, you will have to put your hat on to look at the glass half empty perspective and complement it with the optimism and the business opportunity to grow into new markets or into undertaking large projects. So I think these are the two things that are quantitative and qualitative in nature. Of course, as a lender or as a financing provider, they will also look at things like, who is your developer? What happens, the project is viable, but the developer is not strong enough, and halfway through they couldn't complete it, hence causing you to go into a bit of a stressful mode, right? So, what is the environment outlook? How does all these external factors that is not within your control affect the project and affect your company that is undertaking the project? So all these things, I hope, give the audience today a bit of flavor. What are the categorization of areas that any particular funder, especially lenders in the area of debt, would typically look at? So this is basically one busy slide. I hope that it allows to provide the audience a view of these few components. May I ask Hazel to move to the next slide, please? I think there's one more, but yes, thank you, Hazel. So again, it's a fairly busy slide, but if I may just anchor your eyes or your attention to the far leftmost pillar, right, which talks about capital structure. Essentially, this is what I would call it to be a typical way of how companies are funded, right? At the very bottom, which is the most important, is the owner's equity. How much of your own dollar and your own money have you invested into the business, right? The rest of it, in terms of ability to grow or ability to leverage, is a function of how much that you take on from other parties, right? So think of the very first one is a shareholder equity, and the very topmost is usually your lenders. It could be banks, finance companies, etc. And in the middle here, the sandwich portion, I would sometimes call it like a hybrid. Sometimes there are options that or funding sources that behave very much like a loan, which is called a mezzanine debt. But sometimes there are certain funding sources that behave a little bit like equity, whereby it doesn't have all the features of a loan, but it functions more like additional equity investment into your business, but not quite the owner's equity, right? A private equity firm would be one example, right? To kind of stack the capital structure. Now, why is this important? This is important because in terms of funding or fundraising, it is good to understand where does your funding source fit in this hierarchy. And because to know where they fit, then you can understand what kind of risks that they are taking and what kind of pricing they will expect from you. Should that requirement to get this funding is needed, right? And I think on the right-hand side of it, I believe it's just a matter of examples, giving you the typical, funding sources that are available for this typical, sorry, just give me a moment. Yeah, this funding sources that are typically available to each category, so to speak. I have actually put on one more far right box, which is an off-balance sheet structure. So a good example of an off-balance sheet structure in the far right box is the sale and leaseback, right? So for example, if you were to build an asset, right? But you probably do not have the, either in the first instance, do not have the full capital for it, and probably would want to see if there's a long-term lease arrangement you could do, so that there's a third party that comes in to, expense the cost of construction, but then you sign a long-term lease to be able to operate from the asset without putting in too much of your own dollar money into it. There are also other options, of course, whereby you build it first and then you sell it and then you lease it back. All this allows for, they call it, removing the asset from the balance sheet, but in fact, not just moving the asset, but also the liabilities or the loans that comes with it. But of course, I must caution that I'm getting a bit more technical here. The loan can be moved, like it's no longer a loan, but it's still a liability today in today's accounting standards if you actually lease it on a long-term basis. So all these things are, I would say, financial evolution as well as to how funding is being categorized and funding is being recognized, right, in terms of the different sources of funding, as well as the different approach to getting the funding, right? The reason I'm sharing this with you is because I have a second slide that I'm sure the audience today would like to get some sense. What is the range of pricing? Again, this generalization, it may not be entirely true for all of you, but I would say directionally, it will be pretty much the range. So Hazel, can I request you to move to the next slide, please? Thank you. So this is something that I believe is important to share because very often we talk about financing costs being expensive or cheap, etc. But ultimately, at the end of the day, for our purposes of computation, it is important to understand how much are you using and from whom and for how long to derive, the optimal funding cost or to derive the actual cost that is involved. So may I maybe point you to the box on the left-hand side, external funding. So for example, today, if I need to, go to the bank and my typical cost of loan is say all in, cost of funds plus some risk premium, 5%. So it's on the lower spectrum of funding cost. And the bank is giving me about 70% of what I need, right? So there's 5%. And then I know that I need to source, for another source of funding, another 30% or 20% from, other sources. And someone says to me and say, I'm going to ask you for 10%. Of course, when they ask you for 10%, typically what you can give them as assurances will be inferior to the one that it's giving you the, the larger quantum at a lower rate, right? So in effect, what this means is that in terms of the absolute pricing, 10% sounds like double, right, of the cost. But if we do the math a little bit more accurately, if the party is only giving you just 20% of what the total requirement is, when you do a weighted cost of the total cost, effective real cost, blended, right, so to speak, it's only about 6.1%. So I think this is where, as a business owner, I believe, right, beyond the conventional way of funding, it is good to look at, the spectrum of the different contributors to the financing that you require, and how does this add up, right, in their own respective buckets, and of course, in their own respective collateral assurances that you have to give up, right, in order to secure the funding. So this is basically the parting note I have with regards to, effective funding cost. In the interest of time, I'm trying to condense it. So perhaps Hazel can move this slide to the second last slide, which is the conclusion or parting remarks. One more slide, please, Hazel. Yes, so I think, in my view, from the very first slide, as I mentioned, project viability in itself on a standalone basis is not enough. There are other elements that you have to take into account when planning for expansion or planning for a big undertaking in the area of investment. For example, building a factory in Vietnam, or, moving into a new long-term lease, is it going to be viable? I think all these commitments that are not just, large in nature, but could very well make or break certain things on the foundational level should be evaluated as a whole. So think of it in that manner, so that they will allow a lot more stress testing, a bit of injection of a glass half empty kind of view, so that you can be your own worst critic and you can be confident in progressing with the project and be able to withstand certain stresses that is not under your control. It could be driven by external factors and other things that could happen that could impact your project delivery. Last but not least, as the last few slides have shown, expensive is not always expensive. The most important is what value it creates for you. So for example, if you're going to pay 10% for a short-term period, right, to get this project going or to enable the project to go forward, right, what is that to you on a long-term perspective over, say, 10 years or 15 years, you know, in terms of amortizing it? Or this particular 10% cost is only for 2 years. And it's only for this amount of quantum, but it enables your project to go forward. You don't have to fork out your own cash and really stretch your cash flow as much, and makes it a lot more challenging if there are certain, you know, unexpected elements that happens to your business. Right. So these are things that I hope that will be helpful as part of the different considerations that will be going into your thought process when you move into a new project or a big undertaking, be it in Singapore or even overseas. And of course, you know, being overseas, the risk spectrum increases quite a fair bit due to the market familiarity and other factors. But I hope this sharing was useful for everybody, and thank you so much for your attention. Back to you, Hazel.
Hi, thank you, Emily. Thanks for the good sharing. And now we move on to our Q&A session. So we have a question on the, let me read out the question. It's for Dr. Rafi. Okay, so
Yes.
the question is, which is prefer, PUF panels or manual insulated walls? So would you like to take this question and answer it live?
Okay. I hope that means I consider that this question came with respect to maybe steel PPVC construction. So for the wall of the steel PPVC, actually the choice when you have alternative materials, choice is not a straightforward one, that which one is the best. It depends on your requirement basically. So say if you are using, that means wherever you are using, that is also an important criteria, whether internal wall or the external wall, and also what kind of function you are expecting. That means you are expecting sound insulation, then maybe thermal insulation. So what is your requirement? That means how much you need. Okay, regarding the PUF, that is a pre-finished product. So you have to choose from their available product, that means categories. And on the other hand, when you talk about manual, that means manually insulated wall, meaning it is a customized, you can do your customization as you require. So there is a difference between these two. That means your requirement, which one fulfills better, you will go for it. That is the idea. So and not only functional, that means functional requirement. At the same time, you have to look into the that means other things also, the structural requirement, if it is acting as a barrier or not, whether it has that kind of a strength. And at the same time, maybe its durability is also an issue. Which one lasts long? So it depends. That means you have to suit which one suits your requirement best. You will go for that. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Rafi. That's a really good sharing. Yes, I hope you answered the question. Okay, let's move on to our second question. It's also for Dr. Rafi. Is there any downside of PPVC compared to conventional construction?
Okay, in true sense, there is no general downside, but of course, PPVC is a modular construction and there is some limitation. That means you are limited with some kind of, especially say width requirement, height requirement. So you have to work within that limitation. That is one thing. But for conventional residential development, I think this restriction is not imposing any limitation at all because it is manageable. The sizes are within the commonly used standard sizes. Okay, but in some cases, maybe you need a different size of room that cannot be fit into the module size. Module size means module can be anything, but the issue is the transportation limitation that need to be fulfilled. There could be two solutions. One is, say, you just for a particular, if it is a small fraction of your whole building, maybe one room or something, and not for all apartments or all apartment types. In that case, it can be just very minimum on-site casting together. That means coupling with the PPVC modules. So that is manageable. Say what we are doing for the passes for the lift core, all these areas. But that one is a small area. For bigger area, we can do similar thing with the support from the surrounding PPVCs. So support systems, we don't need to do cast in situ. Only maybe with the floor system we need to do. That is one thing. Secondly, bigger modules also can be done coupling, that means combining a smaller modules. It will be a bit different construction compared to the one 6-sided module that I showed. It may become one kind of 4-sided module or 5-sided module, and those will be combined to get a bigger space from modular construction. So I think all these are, yeah, whenever you get some issues, there will be a way to work it out. So that's okay.
Thank you, Dr. Rafi. Thanks for answering the question. So I have a last question, is for Ms. Chin. So Ms. Chin, so the question is, if I want to invest overseas project, should I seek for a local bank there for financing? Is it difficult?
I think it's a very common question that most people would ask. So thank you, Hazel, for posing that, communicating that. I reckon, it needs to be a thought process. Definitely, if you're going to a new market, right, a new bank that you don't know, or new funder, it will be actually more challenging than to try to convince your local, meaning that where your home country is, to support you overseas. Because again, of course, it depends on how big you are. I'm talking about, assuming that you are a mid-sized corporate, not a very, well-known, brand outside your home market. It would be actually something that you would need to understand and see, okay, of your existing bankers, probably the best approach is look at your existing bankers. Who of these bankers have a market presence in the country that you would like to, grow into? That's number one, from a debt lender perspective. Number two is cast your net wider. Look out for non-bank lenders as well. Maybe not so much the, fly-by-night operator, but I'm talking about private credit funds. I'm talking about, non-bank lenders that are more familiar with the industry. So it needs to be either a market appreciation or industry appreciation. So I'm afraid there's no straightforward answer, Hazel, for that question. But essentially, it's not going to be easy, but there are ways to logically plan for it as well. Right? What my clients will have done or what I've seen has been done is very often it's good to always establish a small relationship. So, for example, let's say if you're a Singapore-based company, you're going into a country like Vietnam, for example. Now, in the local bank context that which banks have a decent presence in Vietnam, right? Again, I'm not doing any marketing here. I'm not affiliated to any banks, but I'm just saying it as it is. So UOB, for example, have some presence in Vietnam, right? So maybe that would be a good start, right? Or let's say if your requirement is something that, even UOB Vietnam cannot support, but your banker is DBS, for example, all right? Then the second natural thing would be maybe to start off with, can I establish a small loan or facility in that market with a local bank, with a bank guarantee from DBS as a start to build that relationship. Very often it's important to plan. That's why I talk about funding planning. How do you plan towards getting the funding? And a lot of times it will require you to think a little bit ahead of time, quite a fair bit, especially if you expect the investment to be very large. Then going in just like that to a conventional bank will not be the easiest, right? And also, of course, look out for the non-bank sources as well, especially those who are specialist funders in a particular industry that they are familiar with. that would be very helpful. So I think that would be my answer, Hazel.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for the insights. Okay, as we are running out of time, thank you for all your questions. And we are now launch a poll. So if you would like to be connected with the panelists, the speakers, please select yes, and we will help to do the connection. Okay, so if you are interested in one-to-one business consultation with us, simply email to ie@spf.org.sg. We'll be happy to meet you to offer a consultation session. So there will be an upcoming webinar on India's post-COVID manufacturing opportunities. If you're interested, please scan the QR code provided on the slide to register or contact us for more information. We will appreciate it if you could give us your feedback on today's webinar. Your feedback is valuable to us. It will help us to improve our future webinars. Kindly scan the QR code on the screen to access the feedback form. On behalf of Singapore Business Federation, we would like to thank everyone for making this event a success. Thank you for joining us today, and we will see you again.